So the last chapter for the semester is to understand the anatomy and the physiology of the reproductive system. It is the most important system because evolution wise, the most vital component of any life form on earth is to make babies and have the generation going. So the reproductive system makes sure that life goes on after we are not here. So we'll study these are the main learning objectives. Just like any other system that we studied, we have to know the anatomical structures and the physiology of each structure and how it overlaps with the other systems in the human body. We'll study gametogenesis. So gametogenesis is talking about how sex cells are formed in the body, like the sperm and the egg. So gamete means your sex cell. Genesis means the beginning. So how they are formed in the body. And we'll study the special structures of both the male and the female reproductive tract and the glands, all of them that will nourish the egg or sperm. It will store it and transport it to the place where it's going to be fertilized. We'll study the hormones that play a role in the reproductive system. So here, this is the life history of a human being. There are two types of cells in our body cells and your sex cells. The type of cell division that happens in the body cells is called mitosis. So there is no change in the chromosome number in mitosis. Whereas in meiosis, there is this huge change in chromosome number where the chromosomes are reduced by half. So what's happening is the egg cell and the sperm cell will undergo meiosis, and the chromosome number is going to be reduced from 46 to 23. So that is called haploid state. And then when the sperm and the egg come together and fertilized to form a zygote, and then it will become a fetus and a baby, then it will undergo mitosis again. So this is the cycle. So what are the main functions of the reproductive system? Is to produce the special gametes like the egg and the sperm. It will store it, nourish it, and transport it where fertilization will happen. It is also going to make all the sex hormones, all the hormones that make a woman, and all the man traits. So all the sex hormones for secondary male and female traits are also made by the sex organs. Two terms just to remind you: gonads are the organs, like the testes in men and ovaries in women are the gonads that produce the special cells. The external anatomical structures for male and female, they are called genitalia. So here is a picture of the male reproductive system. And here's a picture, a cross section of the female reproductive system. So you are familiar with many of the structures. We'll go over all the structures. So when you say reproductive system for male and female, it includes the testes or the ovaries. It also includes special glands. They're called accessory glands. And there's ducts and there's external genitalia. So here the male reproductive system, the main thing is to make sperm in special cells in the testes. We'll study that. And then we'll study how it is going to travel from the testes via these ducts. It's called epididymis and vas deferens. No, ductus deferens, they are the same. And then urethra. And it also makes all the androgens or the male hormones. If you take the female reproductive system, we have the ovaries, and then again, there's a bunch of ducts, and then the pear-shaped uterus, which will nurture the baby, and the external genitalia also, and also it produces all the female hormones. An extra function for the female reproductive system is to nurture the baby, carry it to term. And after the baby is born, lactation. is also involved. So these are the main functions of the male and the female reproductive system. So let's talk about the male reproductive system first. So here in this cross-sectional picture here, you can see the urinary bladder that we studied a few weeks ago. And we can see the urethra that will take the urine to the outside of the body. So here, intermingled with the urinary bladder, you can see the male sex organs. So you can see the scrotum, which has the testes in it. So the sperm cells are going to be made in the scrotum, in the testes. Then it's going to travel along this tube here called ductus deferens or vas deferens, two names for it. And then it loops over the urinary bladder. And then there are many accessory glands here. We'll study that. And then it's going to join the urethra. So they are going to share the same tube for both urination and ejaculation of the sperm. So if you study the pathway of the sperm, it is made in the testes. Then it travels to a structure called epididymis. See, this is the epididymis. This is like a nursery school. This is where they get mature. Then it goes through ductus deferens or vas deferens, loops over the urinary bladder. And then there is an ejaculatory duct. And then it will join together with the urethra. And then it is ejaculated out. Some of the accessory glands are going to make the chemical components of the semen. So we have seminal vesicles here, the prostate gland, and bulbourethral gland. So there are three glands that are responsible for making the semen. And if you talk about external genitalia in men, you can see that the scrotal sac that hangs outside the body houses the testes. And then the penis is the erectile organ, so that it can create enough pressure to push the sperm into the vaginal canal so that it can successfully meet the egg. So a very good mnemonic to remember the pathway of sperm is 7 up. So inside the testes, there's this maze of tubes. They are called seminiferous tubules. So this is where like mitosis and meiosis will happen to make the spermatids. So 7 up. S stands for seminiferous tubules, then it goes to epididymis, then it goes to vas deferens, ejaculatory duct, and then just to keep up the mnemonic, N stands for nothing, and U is for urethra and out through the penis. So this is the pathway the sperm is going to take from where it's made and how it's ejaculated out. So this is an interesting phenomena. It's called gubernaculum testi. So this is talking about the descent of the testi during fetal development. So early on in the fetus, when the baby is only like about 2 or 3 months old, it looks like that the testi is high up in the abdominal cavity, like right next to the kidneys. So you can see the gubernaculum or the cord is like about 5 millimeters, and it remains only 5 millimeters, but the pelvis of the baby is increasing. So 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. So it looks like the testes is reeled into the scrotum. It looks like that, but it's not so. What happens is as the baby grows, the testes descends into the scrotum. So descent of the testes refers to the movement of the testes through the inguinal canal into the scrotal sac during fetal development. So as the baby grows and develops, the abdominal cavity and the pelvic cavity is elongating, and thereby the testes ends up in the scrotal sac. And then it will remain connected to all the internal structures in the male reproductive system. So we'll study each anatomical features of the male and the female sex organs here. So we'll start with the scrotum. So the scrotum and the penis, you can see externally. They are part of the external genitalia. And then you know that they have that wrinkled appearance because of different types of muscles that are found there. So here, the raised connective tissue. So we have two testes. So there are two scrotum, but only one penis. So in the scrotal sac, there are these different layers because it's one of the most vital organs in the body. They are heavily protected by different layers of muscles and cells. So the characteristic wrinkled up appearance of the scrotum is that because right under the skin, there is a muscle called dartos muscle, which is all wrinkled up and bunched together. And the reason being, when the scrotum engorges with blood during an ejaculation, it can accommodate that. And then there'll be fascia before and after the muscle. And then there's a very important muscle called cremaster muscle. So dartos is a smooth muscle. Cremaster is a skeletal muscle. See, for ideal sperm production, the temperature of the testes should be 35 degree Fahrenheit, centigrade, sorry. Our body temperature is 37, but for the testes, it's 2 degree less. It needs a cool environment. So the cremaster muscle, by either contracting or relaxing, can pull the testes either close to the body or let it hang away from the body. The thickened connective tissue that divides the two sacs is called as raphe. So we saw skin, there'll be fascia, then dartos muscle, then more fascia, and then the cremaster muscle. So the main purpose of the cremaster muscle is to maintain temperature, the lower temperature. The main reason for dartos muscle, it'll give that wrinkled appearance and to accommodate the blood engorgement. So here, if you zoom into one scrotum, the membrane that lines the scrotal cavity is called tunica vaginalis. And the membrane that covers the testes is called tunica albuginea. So it's this dense connective tissue that is rich in collagen, and it is supporting and giving it strength. But and then the whole testes is in the scrotal sac, right? So there's visceral and parietal layers here. So it acts as a lubricant, the scrotal cavity. Tunica albuginea will dip into the scrotum, dividing the scrotum into many lobules. So you can see the scrotal cavity. The testis is covered by the visceral layer of tunica vaginalis, and then there'll be cavity, and then the parietal layer of tunica vaginalis. Tunica albuginea is the membrane that is sticking to the scrotal cavity that will dip into the scrotum, dividing into lobules. How you cut an orange open and then you see all these lobules, and inside the lobules is where you see these highly twisted and coiled tubes called seminiferous tubes, and this is where the sperm is made. So if you zoom into a scrotal sac, here you can see the different layers: the skin, fascia, dartos muscle, again fascia, cremaster muscle, then the parietal, and then the cavity and the visceral pericardium, tunica albuginea, and the lobules. And then here you see the seminiferous tubules, all these tubes. So this is where the stem cell for making the sperm is housed. So these are the different layers of protection of the scrotum. So if you, so these seminiferous tubules are connected to a structure called reed testi. See, this structure is called reed testi. And then through efferent ductules, it will enter the epididymis. So there's about 15 to 20 efferent ductules that will connect the reed testi to the epididymis. So the sperm is made here, but it's not mature. So it will mature in the epididymis. So we'll see a cross section of the seminiferous tubules. It is very interesting. So here, this is one tubule that was cut. So just like any other structures you've studied in anatomy, the cavity or the hollow cavity inside is called as the lumen. And there are, in the outside periphery, are the stem cells. They're called spermatogonium. So they are under the influence of several hormones. So when they get the clue, they will undergo mitosis and then meiosis to make the sperm. So once, and then they'll have helper cells. They're called nurse cells. They're called sustentacular nurse cells. And then there's interstitial cells. So there's a lot of special cells that are found in the seminiferous tubules. So when they get the clue to undergo mitosis, it will differentiate to form something called primary spermatocyte. And then that will differentiate to form secondary spermatocyte. That will differentiate further to form a spermatid, or it's also called spermatozoa. The nurse cells or sustentacular cells are, remember when we studied the brain, we studied glial cells will help the brain cell. It's kind of like that. The sustentacular cells will nourish the spermatids and keep it safe and help it to mature. It will provide all the nourishment for its development. And it will also shave off all the unwanted cytoplasm so that it takes the tadpole shape. So this is the only cell in the human body that can swim. It has a flagella. It's so fascinating. So if you take a sliver of the seminiferous tubules and blow it up, here you can see it. So you can see the spermatogonium on the outside. That will differentiate to form primary spermatocyte. Then secondary spermatocyte that will be worked on by the sustentacular cells to form the spermatids. So a lot of differentiation is happening here. And then a summary slide is here that explains everything that I just told you. So how does the spermatid differentiate and change in order to take the unique tadpole shape of a sperm? So this is very bulky and this can't swim in the vaginal canal. How can this swim against gravity to reach the egg? So a lot of differentiation has to go on. So enzymatic shaving off of all the unwanted cell organelles like endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi apparatus, and lysosomes and ribosomes, everything is gotten rid of. So the cytoplasm is shaved off, leaving only a head, a neck, and a tail. So the head will have a region called acrosome that is full of enzymes. So these enzymes play a crucial role in penetrating the egg during fertilization. The nucleus will have dad's chromosomes, 23 chromosomes from dad. The neck region is rich in mitochondria. So this will do cellular respiration to make ATP so that it can power the flagella to swim. So that's the tail. The flagella is also called tail. It will help it to swim. So here you can see it in the microscope. It has the typical shape. It has a head, neck, and a tail. So this is how a sperm is made. So now after the sperm is made in the epididymis, it has to take its journey. It will take its journey to the reed testi, efferent ductules, and it has entered the epididymis. Epididymis has three parts. The swollen part is called as the head, then is the body of the epididymis, and then tail of the epididymis. And then it becomes the vas deferens later. Sperm will hang around in the epididymis for up to 2 weeks. This is where they get mature. So what is the function of the epididymis? It will monitor and adjust the fluid of the semen and the seminiferous tubules. If there is any damaged or mutated sperm, this is where they are recycled and phagocytized. It is going to store the spermatozoa and protect it. So it will nourish the sperm and mature the sperm, and it will get rid of, like sperm with like two tails or two heads and stuff. So this is where the editing part happens in the epididymis. And from the epididymis, it is going to enter the vas deferens or ductus deferens. It's about 45 centimeters long. So it begins at the tail of the epididymis and it loops over the urinary bladder, goes behind the bladder, and then through the ejaculatory duct, it will join the ureters. So the ductus deferens behind the urinary bladder will enlarge into a structure called ampulla. And the wall is made up of smooth muscle. So this can contract and relax, and it can have peristaltic movements. See, we've seen peristalsis in the GI tract. So in the urinary tract also. Now we are seeing peristaltic movement in ductus deferens. So this will squeeze the sperm up the urinary bladder and then down to the ureters. So the ampulla is here, ejaculatory duct, and this is the ureters. So here's another view of the ductus deferens. The swollen part of the ductus deferens is called ampulla. So the ampulla joins with an accessory gland called seminal gland. See, there are two seminal glands. So it's like a junction. All of them come together right where the prostate gland is. So the seminal gland and the prostate gland and the ductus deferens, they'll all come together so that all the semen chemical constituents that are made in the different accessory glands can all mix and come together. And then it empties into the ureters. So the ejaculatory duct from the ampulla is only about 2 centimeters long. So this is the junction that I told you. The ejaculatory duct and the ureters will join together here. The ureters have, because they are traveling through many parts of the penis, the part that they travel through in the prostate is called prostatic urethra. Then it is membranous urethra, and then it is penile urethra. So it has 3 regions, the urethra. So let's talk about the chemistry of the semen, because the sperm by itself, it's very delicate and it can't survive without the nourishment of the semen. So 60% of the seminal fluid is made by the seminal glands. So what is the chemistry of it? It has fructose, which is the energy supply for the sperm. It will have prostaglandins, which is responsible for muscle contractions to push the sperm towards the egg. It has fibrinogen that will make the semen to clot in the vaginal canal so that it can hang around there for longer time. The prostate gland will make acidic exudate, which is about 20 to 30% of the semen volume. And this has several functions, antibiotic functions, and some say that's why men don't get UTI. Then the third accessory gland is the Cowper's gland or bulbourethral gland right here. And what they do is they secrete an alkaline mucus. So before ejaculation, the urinary tract is very acidic, and you don't want the sperm to get exposed to the acidity immediately. So what happens is before ejaculation, it will coat the urethra with an alkaline mucus so that the sperm is protected. So it's also called pre-ejaculatory fluid. So what is the volume of semen? It's about 2 to 5 ml. It's very basic. And if you do a sperm count after a abstinence period, then there's like 20 to 100 million sperm per ml of ejaculate. So men will make sperm constantly starting from puberty, whereas women are born with all the eggs and they release only one egg per month during the menstrual cycle. So let's talk about the next structure, which would be the external genitalia. It's the penis. It is a tubular muscular organ. So it has dual function. It has to take the urine out of the body from the urinary bladder. So it will use the urethra that passes through the penis. And it also is a sexual organ because it's going to be the bridge to conduct the sperm out of the male reproductive system into the female body. So there are two functions. The part of the penis which is attached to the body is called as the root. Then it's the shaft, which is the tubular structure, and the swollen head part is called as the glans. And this will have the skin called prepuce, which can be removed during circumcision. So if you take a cross section of the penis, it is very interesting. It has this, it's richly supplied with arteries. So you can see an artery here, an artery here, and these purple tubes in the shaft of the penis are called corpus cavernosum. So each one will surround a artery. So there's a corpora cavernosa here, corpora cavernosa surrounding an artery. So during ejaculation, when it's engorged with blood, it can have an erection. And then here surrounding the urethra is the spongy urethra. So if you do a cross section of the penis, this is what you're going to see. It is full of arteries and veins and nerves, very sensitive. A lot of blood supply is there. So you can still see the dartos muscle, a lot of collagen, corpus spongiosum surrounding the ureters, and then corpora cavernosa surrounding the arteries. Here's a picture in some cultures. The prepuce is the foreskin, and it can collect a waxy waste material called smegma. So by cutting off the foreskin by circumcision, they can avoid infection happening. So all the activities of actually both male and female reproductive system is controlled by hormones. So the hypothalamus, if you remember, it will release the gonadotrophin releasing hormone, GRH. That will trigger the production of follicular stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone through the pituitary gland. The follicle stimulating hormone will target the sustentacular cells or the nerve cells that will trigger spermatogenesis. And the luteinizing hormones will cause the secretion of the male hormones, testosterone and androgens. So both the male and the female reproductive system is regulated and modulated by the endocrine system, and the endocrine system under the control of the brain. Moving on to the female reproductive system. See, it's very interesting that most of the anatomical structures you see in males, it will have a counterpart in the female too. So you can, look at this table here later. So let's look at the structures of the female reproductive system. So here you can see the ovaries, and then it's the uterine tube, fallopian tube. Then we see this pear-shaped muscular organ called uterus. There are many layers in the uterus. The opening of the uterus is called the cervix. This is very important during child delivery, baby delivery. And then it's the vaginal canal. And then it is the external genitalia, where you'll see the clitoris and you'll see the labium minus and the labium majus. It will also have accessory glands. Here you can see the paraurethral gland and the greater vestibular gland. They'll play a role in lubrication and other functions also. So it is made up of the ovaries, the fallopian tube or the uterine tube, the uterus, the vagina, and the external genitalia. So the whole female reproductive organ is kept in place by ligaments and uh, other structures. So in the abdominal pelvic cavity, the ovary and the uterus is held in place by the broad ligament, which is a fold of the peritoneum. And then you can see the ovarian ligament that is giving support for the ovaries, suspensory ligament. So this is also a point of entry for the arteries and veins to the hilum of the ovaries. This part of the ligament is called mesovarium, the superior part of the broad ligament. So just like the testes, the ovaries is also highly nourished by blood vessels. And then there's tunica albuginea, just like how we saw in the testes. So ligaments are keeping the ovaries in place. So how is the egg made in the ovaries? So this is the structure of the ovaries. So a female baby is born with all the eggs that she'll ever have in her life. And then when she hits puberty, on the release of certain hormones, she will start her menstrual cycles. It's called ovarian cycle. So typically, a ovarian cycle for typical people, it's 28 days. The first 13 days, the follicle will develop in order to prepare the egg for fertilization. It is called follicular phase or pre-ovulatory phase, which is day 1 to day 13. And then day 14 is when ovulation happens, or ovulation means release of the egg. And then the follicular cells will hang around and they'll produce some enzymes that will help with pregnancy if fertilization happens. So that is called post ovulation or the luteal phase. So here is an ovary, and then there are these special sperms, not sperm cell, egg cells. So the process of egg production is called oogenesis. So these primary follicles, they will contain the stem cell in order to make eggs, and they are highly regulated by hormones. So when they get the hormone signal, they will differentiate to a primary oocyte, a secondary oocyte, and then it will mature. Egg is released during ovulation. So here's the picture. So if you take the structure of an ovary, it has a cortex and a medulla. The outer part is the cortex. And in the cortex are the special follicle cells. These are the special cells that can differentiate to form an egg. So it's called primary oocyte. So the primordial follicles are found in the cortex. So this is in day 1. So when it gets the follicle stimulating hormone from the pituitary gland, when the hormone triggers it, it will differentiate to form the primary follicle. So the follicle is a secretory sac. So it will increase. So about, like, let's say it will start with about 20 cells. And then only 2 cells will be selected to become the primary follicle. And in the 2 cells, only 1 will become the secondary follicle. This will disintegrate. Then the secondary follicle will become the tertiary follicle. This is also called as a Graafian follicle. So now the primary oocyte has all these nourishing cells. This is called the fluid sac of follicles. The large follicle is called as an antrum. So now it is at this stage, day 14, that the egg is ready, and then it will be released from the ovaries, and it's called the ovulation phase. Then the rest of the cells that of the follicle, it is called corpus luteum. It will slowly start to disintegrate. So the corpus luteum will either make hormones if pregnancy is sustained, or it will disintegrate. That will happen from day 15 to day 28. So every step of the ovulation cycle, from follicle development, primary oocyte, secondary oocyte, tertiary oocyte or Graafian follicle, corpus luteum, which is the sac of the rest of the follicles, and then it disintegrates to form corpus albicans. They are all under the control of hormones. So here the gonadotrophic hormones like luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone, they are peaking at ovulation. So in order to trigger it, you need follicle stimulating hormone. In order for ovulation to happen, you need luteinizing hormone. And in addition, if fertilization happen and if the baby is going to form, you can see this interplay, the symphony of the different hormones that can be made by the corpus luteum. So you can see how the progesterone levels are peaking if the baby is sustained. So these hormones control the menstrual cycle. So just to explain one more time, to trigger oogenesis, we need follicle stimulating hormone. To trigger ovulation, we need luteinizing hormone. The progesterone level will increase after, will increase in the luteal phase. So the menstruation will happen after the peaks have happened. So menstruation will occur after this progesterone drops. So the whole cycle of menstruation is under the control of hormones. Every step is controlled by hormones. So once the egg is released, it's going to make its journey through the fallopian tube or the uterine tube. There are three parts. The first swollen part is called infundibulum. It will have finger-like projections called fimbriae. And the egg will be sucked up into the fimbriae. So it's going to move through the infundibulum. Then it travels through the ampulla. And the part where it joins with the uterus is called as the isthmus. So there are three regions in the uterine tube. So if you take the shape of the uterus, it's a hollow muscular organ. It is the egg must meet the sperm like in the first 24 hours since it was released in order for successful fertilization to happen. The first 8 weeks of pregnancy, we still call it an embryo. After 8 weeks, then the baby is called as a fetus. So the uterus has to provide a very strong mechanical protection for the developing baby if fertilization happens. It has to supply the nourishment and it has to remove the waste. So in order to meet all the high demands of a growing baby, it is highly supported. There's lots of ligaments that will keep the uterus in place, right? We saw the broad ligament that is attached to the pelvic cavity. It is highly nourished with arteries in order to supply the baby with nourishment and to get rid of the waste. It's about 7 centimeters long, 5 centimeter wide, and it's about 100 grams in weight. So now the egg has traveled from the ovaries, fimbriae, infundibulum, ampulla, isthmus, and it has entered the uterine cavity. The top part of the uterus is called as the fundus of the uterus, and then the body of the uterus, and the exit is the cervix. This canal is the internal canal or os of the uterus, the isthmus of the uterus, and then the main thing here is it is protected by 3 layers of muscle: perimetrium, myometrium, and endometrium. And you can see a rich supply of blood for the muscular wall of the uterus because it has to carry the baby to term and nourish the baby. If there is no baby, then the sloughing off of the endometrium is what is called as a menstrual cycle. It is again controlled by hormones. So the uterus body is the largest part of the uterus. The curved top is called as the fundus. The opening is called as the cervix. And then that leads to the cervical canal. So if you zoom into the 3 layers, muscular layers, so we see the endo means inside, endometrium, muscular layer, myometrium, and the perimetrium, that is a serous layer. And then you can see how the arteries, so you can see the uterine artery, the largest artery. It enters in, there are straight arteries, and then there's arcuate arteries that will highly nourish the endometrium. So this is where the fertilization will happen, in the endometrium. fertilization does not happen, our body will enter the menstrual cycle. So this is the sloughing off of the endometrium, or the inside wall of the uterus. So this is the, see here you can see it is there are many phases. It's one is this proliferative phase, when it actually thickens because of progesterone, anticipating pregnancy. The picture in the center is called proliferative phase. So the first picture is where menstruation has happened and the endometrium has sloughed off. And then our body is going to prepare for pregnancy by building the endometrium because of a spike in progesterone. And then the next one would be the secretory phase. This overlaps with the ovarian luteal phase. So so like if no fertilization happens, it will enter the menstrual cycle, and then it will build it up, and then it will break down. So this goes round and round. So that's the menstrual cycle. The first menstrual cycle is called menarche, which happens in early teens. The last menstrual cycle is called menopause. So that happens in between this age, 45 to 58. And then there are many diseases and also stress and hormonal disorders that will cause, irregular periods. That's called amenorrhea. The next female structure is the vaginal canal. So you can see the cervix, and here's the vaginal canal. It can be 7 to 9 centimeters long. It is a muscular tube. It extends from the cervix to the vestibule of your external genitalia. So there are three functions for the vaginal canal. It is a passageway for the menstruation to happen, to get rid of the endometrium. This is also the receiving place for the penis during sexual intercourse. And it is the inferior part of the birthing canal. So the baby is the cervix has to open, and the baby has to pass through the vaginal canal for delivery. The membrane here that protects the vaginal canal is called as hymen. Coming to the external genitalia, there is a pad of fat in the external genitalia that guard the opening of the vagina. Is called mons pubis. Clitoris will have a prepuce, just like the male penis, and then there's glands. The urethral opening through which we urinate, and here's the vaginal opening. The first flap of skin is called labia minora. The second flap is labia majora. In addition to carrying the baby to term, women also have the function of nurturing and lactating the baby. So here's a mammary gland, or your breast, that sits on the pectoral muscles here. So there is a lot of fat, and then there's lots of lobules where you see lactiferous ducts. So these are under hormonal control also. So after the baby is born, they are triggered, and milk will be produced in the lactiferous ducts that will exit through the nipple. The skin surrounding the nipple is called as the areola. Here is the anatomy and physiology of sexual interaction. So this is not it. So this is a summary slide of all the hormones that are involved in the male and the female. The physiology of sex is here. So it all starts with the arousal, which is under parasympathetic control. So we've already studied this. So the man has to be in a calm state in order to have an erection of the penis. So it's under the parasympathetic nervous system. But when erection, emission, and ejaculation needs to happen, that would be sympathetic stimulation. And then after the sperm exits the penis, and the penis comes back to its original form, it subsides. It's called detumescence. So those two are under sympathetic nervous system. The effect of aging on the reproductive system, like in women, it's menopause, when all the hormones for menstruation all will change. The balance will change, the concentration of estrogens and progesterone, and then they'll stop having a period. So that is menopause. It can also happen in males. It's called male climacteric or andropause. There is declining reproductive function because of declining testosterone. That can happen in the 50s and 60s.